Hey everybody, we are going to be covering some of the fastest ways to level from 1 to 100 in order by world tier. We'll just go through each and show you how to maximize your leveling in every single one and not waste your time on doing stuff you shouldn't. I got to these by taking every single class into world tier 4 in under 4 hours and then just pushing my builds, so I had amazing endgame builds. I learned a ton through this process, and I'll make sure that you guys have one of the cleanest ways and even tips for when it goes wrong. Now, this does not require any of the seasonal stuff like mine cages or holy bolts, but I will show you where to use those when they make sense. So let's kick this off at the very beginning. It's a thing that has changed since leveling guides in the past, and that is, where do you start? Instead of starting in World Tier 1 like we did often, we are going to just jump into World Tier 2. The game has gotten easy enough, and with the addition of Hell Tides in early game, jumping into World Tier 2 is not a bad place to start to level up very, very fast. The extra experience is finally worth the difficulty difference. Next, a thing that you want to pay attention to before you go into leveling, because in early game, if you're doing it right, especially in Hell Tides, you are leveling crazy fast and you're just getting levels all the time. And if you have to stop and think a lot about what your skills are, you are going to find yourself slowing down massively for no reason. It doesn't matter as much. The game has gotten to a place where it is very easy in early game to level fast without having perfect builds. You can follow a guide if that is your thing, but I'm going to show you one of the easiest ways to kind of spend your points early so you don't have to think about it much. So here we are in the beginning skill tree. If you have played this campaign already and done the unlocks from the base game, then you have points to use right away. The recommendation I'm going to give for you is pretty clean. You get 2 points into some of the basics. The basic isn't where you're trying to do a lot of power, so it's either pick one and then do one on the tree, or just 2 into it, whatever it takes to open up the next area, which is where it actually matters. This is where we get our core skills. Early on in leveling, any core skill maxed out is just unstoppable. It's insane. You can play around and see which ones you like more, but if you pick any one of these and you just slam all the points into it and the extension up the chain, you are going to have a major one-click kill machine. Now, you're not at a lot of risk for dying early, except for the maiden. We'll talk about that. There are strategies to basically be around her and get the experience, but not get killed by her all the time. But as you start needing more defense, then for every class, it's the same thing: basics, core, and then defense. Then you start tacking in some points here. So it doesn't matter if you're running a sorceress like I am looking at right here, but any class that you're running, you can come in and do this. So it's 2 here, max out one of the core skills down the chain, and as soon as you start needing some defense, you start loading in here. What I have noticed is by just doing this, pretty much level 1 to 10, I can not even worry about the skill tree unless I want to. I'm just clearing things fairly well. Then I can take a break at 10, load in some points in my defense and some of these side skills, and keep going. It really is what you like. If you do not feel it doesn't feel fun to play the core skill that you've picked, simply reroute the points. Just take them out and put them back in the way you want them. It can happen really quick, and I'll show you ways to do it even while you're staying in places you're getting tons of experience. So this is where the rubber hits the road. We are going to be finding a Hell Tide as quickly as we can. And so what we're going to do is, when we get in the Hell Tides, we are going to track down the location of the maiden. You can either do this by looking at maps online if you want to go hunt those down, or you simply can just wander around until you see the maiden head show up. For some reason, it doesn't show as often in early game. You have to actually kind of track it down. I don't know why that is. In end game, it's very easy to open up as soon as you're in Hell Tides, and you can usually find it. But look for the giant skull that I think has the broken horn. Look for that and go to the maiden directly. And the reason we're doing that is the maiden drops a ton of gear and a ton of XP, but even better, she is the place that is a center point for everybody else playing. So even though your build can't take the maiden, other people can. And the faster they can take down the maiden, the faster you gain experience. So this is not the only way to do it, but this is the fastest for sure. If you are doing what I call a ride-along, basically, you go in there and you do everything you can to help, but early on, you're not going to be dealing a lot of damage to maiden. So you're just going to try to stay out of her way. And when she rings you with that fire, you're going to keep moving so you don't get killed. Stay away from even her Hellborn, because you do not have to take that much down. You will level up very, very fast. I mean, this is where I was able to basically sit in this in one Hell Tide. I found myself at level 25. So it can be really nuts, especially if someone's coming in and can one-shot the maiden. But even if they can take her down regularly and you can stay safe during that, this is your fastest chance at experience early on. Now, what happens if you show up and the maiden is not there? Because you can't take her down at level 1. Even at level 10, it's going to be really rough. There is some strategy we can do to beat her a lot sooner, but until there's somebody else there to help you, it's not a great strategy. So what I do first is I kind of load in and then load out a few times just to see if by being popped into a different instance of the game, there will suddenly be people there that are actually taking down the maiden. You know, if you are starting from scratch in a season, you don't even have the pieces to summon her yourself. So you're just kind of, if this loading in will give you the only chance. But if she is not there, what do? You're just going to continue running Hell Tides. And that means you're just going to use your core skill that you've kind of overpowered to clear mobs fast, grab cinders, and then go after all the chests. In early game in World Tier 2 for us, it is going to be all mystery chests, and they are great experience. They are also great legendary loot as soon as you get to a high enough level. It will still allow you to do what we would have done with the maiden and get full legendary gears pretty early, you know, I'm saying around level 20. Now, one thing, whether you do either strategy, a lot of time is wasted for people that basically they stop and go to town every time their bag is full, and they spend so much time doing that there, or every time they get a new piece, they're sitting and pondering over the item over and over again. But either way, what I recommend doing is, if like in the maiden, you kind of go out to the side or wait in between rounds when people are loading her up, and just kind of stick on the side and quickly load in your points. They do not, again, they don't have to be perfect, and you can easily undo them and put them back in. The same thing with gear. I just kind of scan what gear's in my bag as soon as I get an opportunity to do it, and I just equip everything that is better. I'm not looking for perfect aspects, you know, as I have said, so just load them in and you'll keep getting more and more powerful, which will allow you to do more in taking down the maiden, as well as clearing some of the things on the side just to help everybody out there, which will also increase your experience and the speed at which the maiden is being taken down. And eventually, you'll actually get powerful enough to take the maiden yourself if you need to. Another tip for gearing is stop picking up rares as soon as you're getting consistent legendaries. It'll save a ton of time. I won't even bother trying to go back to town to break them down. If you're leveling fast enough, you are in full legendaries by level 20, you can start dropping, just not even picking up the rares and dropping any that do end in your bag just on the ground, because you want to collect the legendaries primarily. They will give you the materials if you break them down for later crafting and enchanting and stuff that you want to do, as well as start building that Codex of Power. Every time you break down a legendary that has an aspect you don't have or a higher power of it, that's going to go right into your Codex of Power. So we really do want to maximize getting those and breaking those down, so we have all the aspects we really want as we start progressing deeper into the game, so we can move faster, and even when we enter World Tier 4, get to our crazy powerful builds very, very fast. At the end of this, I'll also show you a bonus of what kind of my rotation is when I do get into town to save a ton of time. It's one of my favorite strategies, and it is super useful. So at some point in your leveling, you're going to get high enough level that you'll start dropping potions. You do not have to save these for anything. A lot of times you're getting a lower level potion. Use it to get that experience boost. That is way more important. You don't have to go worry about collecting herbs to build one or anything like that. But if they drop, use them. So as soon as you see that, keep using those while you're doing the Hell Tides, and you'll level even faster. So now that we're doing that, we should be leveling up pretty fast. And one of the side goals on ourselves, if we are running Hell Tides on our own and not around the maiden with other people helping us here, then we want to get to a point where we're powerful enough to actually clear the maiden. If we have been running with a group of people, we want to stay with that group as much as possible. Honestly, when you are in a good group that is clearing the maiden fast, I don't even care about the chest. You don't even need to get those. Stay in that to get the levels you get, because it is much, much faster. Even the experience you get from the chest, not worthy of the difference of just staying there with a maiden, because you may not get another clearing group. There's been some times when I did the run, and the first Hell Tide I was in, I got there about 45 minutes left, and I was able to get all the way to level 25, I think almost 30 in one Hell Tide. It was insane. And so that helped me obviously be crazy fast, because less than 50 minutes, I was already approaching a level that I'm starting to think about the capstone. Now, if you are running it on your own, you do need to do a couple things that you wouldn't have to do. If you're running with a group, you just kind of stay there and get as much experience until you're ready to start putting your build together for the capstone. If you've done it, if you want to do it earlier, you have to do a couple things. You have to start getting a full collection of legendary gear, just kind of get all your slots actually with a legendary piece in it. It doesn't have to be perfect aspects yet. And you want to then put aspects on each of the pieces that make good sense for you're adding more damage to the core skill in the build you're currently running, even if it's a haphazard build. Then you want to also do a temper. In the early gear, in sacred gear, you only get one temper. So just kind of look at each of the pieces and see if there's anything from the recipes you have already gotten that allows you to do a lot more power, and then you can throw tempers where you need them. You should be able to do decent damage to the maiden, at least withstand some of her damage. if you've chosen correctly. So at this point, then we know we can clear the maiden. Once you know that, and really the aim for this is ideally, you can do it earlier than level 30, but really around level 30 and between level 30 and 33, you should be finishing out your gear and then start testing yourself against the maiden. You don't need to do it earlier than that. Now, if you're finishing and you're pretty strong against the maiden, you do good damage against her, that is a good sign that you are ready for the capstone. But before you do that, there is another place to get a decent amount of power, and that is going to be completing your class quest. Whatever class you have, there is a quest that probably came up around 15 to 20, depending on what you are, and it will give you a significant jump in power. So I finished doing Hell Tides around level 33. I have full legendary sets. I start putting good aspects on. I start tempering. I run my class quest. Now I have that extra boost of power, and it is now capstone time. I am aiming to start the capstone around 33, 34. And that usually with the leveling I do inside, by the time I kill that boss, I am hitting level 35, readying me for all of the sacred gear that I want to be actually able to equip when I do go to World Tier 3, so I can jump right in. And even if I'm not doing well, and I'm barely like hanging on to even clear mobs in Hell Tides, I'm getting sacred gears, and suddenly I'm very powerful. Now, another question you might have at this point is, do I need to make sockets for my gear and put gems in all of them? You can. It is not crucial for Capstone 1. There is some times where I would do it for Capstone 2, and we'll talk about that. So now, what do we do in World Tier 3? Well, surprisingly enough, it looks almost exactly like what we were doing in World Tier 2. The Maiden is still key. If you're not doing the Maiden, you're running Hell Tides to get chests, to get items, to get strong enough to fight the Maiden. That is really kind of the rotation. Again, you are replacing any gear you find, legendaries, with the sacred version of it, as long as it does more damage and has more armor. You just want to be able to withstand not getting one shot with the Maiden as long as you're staying around her. You will, early on, and just like in World Tier 2, you're going to stay to the fringes and not try to jump in and take her on head to head. You're going to let other people come in and do it. So you do want other parties there until you have gotten to a place that you're strong enough. For potions, same thing, use them. You should be seeing, if you are doing a seasonal run through, this is where you can use Holy Bolts. You are not picking up rares at all. You do not need them. You are then spending as much time to spend your points when you're just on the sidelines, rather than going back to town and doing this whole hoopla to get everything in the right place. And the same with gear. When you see stronger gear, you put it on, no big deal. Now, our targets for when we are going to do Capstone 2 are the biggest change between season, or between World Tier 2 and now, and finishing out Capstone 2. And that's simply around level 50. I'm starting to think, hey, I should get my final legendary sets together, get as many items that at this level and above that are powerful enough, or I'm just happy with. And then I put on, so I have a full set of legendaries. Then right around 52 to 53, I do not have to do the class quest, so there's nothing between this. Around 52 or 53, I'm putting on aspects that help my build, whatever I'm running. It doesn't have to be a perfect build. And I am putting on the tempers that are going to help that make more sense. I would start to check resistances here. They are not crucial, but if you have like 15 resistance rather than closer to what you need for max at 70, you may want to do something about that. Easiest way to do that is any socket that's available on your amulets or your rings. You can then look and see what resistance the different gems would get, and you can get a decent boost just that way without having to try to re-roll all your gear to do that. So I would check resistances. You do not have to be maxed. I found 40 to 50 is fine for Capstone 2 without a lot of issues. Right around level 55 is where we want to end our Capstone run, and we do that because the same reason we had before, the Ancestrals in World Tier 4 only let you equip them when you're level 55 or above. So if you come in any earlier, you're sitting with the same gear set you have with no improvements, while you're collecting a bunch of gear that should be equipable, but it is not yet. So if you wait till 55, it just makes leveling much faster. So again, when we look at the times, an hour and a half. If you are playing a little bit more leisurely in World Tier 2, you may take up to 2 hours, but it's not much longer than that. But an hour and a half, I've even done it in an hour. It's great. And then in World Tier 3, I've been able to clear it in 2 hours, leaving me well under the 4 hours into World Tier 4. But in most cases, almost every one of my classes, even when I had a really bad run and I never saw anybody else helping with a maiden, the entire time I was leveling in both World Tiers, actually, it was pretty bad. I still noticed that I was able to easily do that 4 hours. So that is freaking cool. In 4 hours from when you start your class, you're now in a place to start building your actual end game build. Now in World Tier 4, that is where the biggest changes are to leveling. There is 2 strategies. I'm going to quickly give you my most recommended for leveling, for speed of leveling, and then I will talk about the other modification I've made that is for people who are not enjoying Nightmare Dungeons as much as some others. I have found myself in that place many times, so that's why I've thought about this. But for speed leveling or being able to level through World Tier 4, getting to 100 and having your glyphs decked out as well, this is probably one of the cleanest strategies. So right when you come in, you're around level 55. You do want to start with the maiden runs, just as you've been doing, and that is just to get a full set of ancestral gear. As soon as you got a good set of ancestral gear, you are now at this point probably looking at either build guides or have a good idea of the build you're putting together, and you know what aspects you're targeting. And so in this, when we're doing these early runs, we're just getting some more levels. We're trying to get to around 60, 65 is really the target with gear that is ancestral. It doesn't have to be perfect 925 gear at all. This is your entry level build that is going to allow you to start running Nightmare Dungeons. So as soon as we can get to 65, this is the place, if you're playing in Season 4, that you would run Mind Cage as soon as you're powerful enough. As soon as you have that ancestral gear, you have good aspects on it, you're starting to temper for an actual build. And in the ancestral gear, we get 2 tempers for each thing. So it's really easy to early on get a very, very powerful build, even if everything's not perfect. And definitely powerful enough to start pushing into Nightmare Dungeons. Now, I do spend a little bit more time getting a build together here, and that is because I want to be able to jump into later Nightmare Dungeons. So my goal here is to be able to jump into around Nightmare Dungeon 45. And the reason that is I can go from not full 925 gear to all 925 gear just by being able to make that leap. And so if I'm spending the extra time running the maidens to get pretty decent items between level 55 when I enter and around 65, maybe 70 the latest, then I can jump into 45. I get a lot more glyph XP as I go through. And I am getting all 925 gear, and this starts giving me reason to switch out 925 pieces that have the good affixes that I want on my piece right now for my build, because you're actually building your build now. You're getting those glyph powers, you're running into the Paragon points. It's just a good place to be. Now, in World Tier 4, it is crucial, especially if you're going to try to jump into level 45 Nightmare Dungeons, that you cap out your armor. Now, if you don't know this, if you're in your inventory where it shows you where all your stuff is equipped, over to the left side, it shows you your armor. If you float over your armor, it'll tell you what percentage coverage you have. If you are under 85% coverage, which is damage reduction, then you are not maxed. So at any different point, as you level up, it changes the armor minimum or maximum that you have to get that 85. So early on, it's less, and it starts to grow. By the time you're level 100, it's going to be 9,230, oddly enough. And so at level 100, that's what it's going to be to get 85. But earlier, it doesn't need to be that high, and you can check it quickly by floating over that. And now you want to also make sure that your resistances are capped. It matters a lot. This will stop you from getting one shot by the maiden. It'll stop you from not being able to clear dungeons and have to drop much lower in levels to do so. And what we want to be able to do is not just clear the Nightmare Dungeon, but we want to be able to readily clear it. So when events come up, the ones where you kill a group of a mob and then another mob shows up, and the faster you kill that mob, more mobs show up. That is your best opportunity for experience, hands down, across anything in the game. I think if you're running Nightmare Dungeons against the Maiden by themselves, and you weren't doing any of the side events that show up in Nightmare Dungeons, the cursed chest or the cursed shrines, or hey, we wandered into here and we can't get ourselves out, please help us. Any of those are the best experience you are going to get in the game. So with Nightmare Dungeons having that as an added piece, that's the difference. A lot of people are saying, hey, they still really like doing Helltides, and that is a choice. But at some point, you got to level those glyphs. And if you want maximum leveling to glyphs and leveling to your character, this is going to be your best opportunity. Now, this you can ride all the way to level 100. I mean, basically, once you start doing that, you're maxing out your glyphs, you're getting all those Paragon points, you can run to 100. If you are getting bored of Nightmare Dungeons and you've already leveled up all your glyphs and there's no reason all the way to 21, and there's no reason to continue here, you can go level up wherever you want. But this is still going to be your fastest bet all the way to 100. So stay on this. Now, if you're one of those people that hate Nightmare Dungeons, quick modification. I just go way later. If I'm just not feeling it, and I've done this because I've taken all the classes into endgame at this point, I will just wait until I'm closer to like 80 or 90 even on my level so that I can actually push Nightmare Dungeons closer to, say, 70. Because if I'm pushing somewhere between 80 and 90 on the Maiden, and I've done that the whole time, I'm also getting 925 gear, especially if I'm running the Mind Cage. That guarantees it a lot sooner because you get that 10 level boost to your monsters. And what determines if you drop 925 is the monster level of what you're killing. And so I've been able to like push that to 80 or 90, get a pretty solid set, even with 925s, and then jump into Nightmare Dungeons around 80 or 90, and I can start at like level 70 plus. And that obviously gives me way more glyph experience. And it is really cool because you get so much glyph experience that your glyphs are leveling up so fast. As long as they're equipped into your board, you're also getting stronger, and you have more of your Paragon points unlocked, so you have more glyphs installed than if you're starting at like 60 or 65. So that is the modification I would do. Some people even go as far as they really hate it and they wait till they're 100 and full geared and tempered and everything, and then they'll just start doing 90 to 100, and that's all they do for Nightmare Dungeons 2, and they blitz through it. So the big difference in the strategy that I just talked about, we are hunting down the events. We are trying to check every corner just in case there's an event. In this strategy, we are trying to ignore everything. We're not even killing things if we don't need to, because your limit's going to be your glyph leveling at that point, not your leveling to 100. You do any of the side stuff, you're going to level a lot earlier and just going to be running Nightmare Dungeons without any experience bonus. So if in this strategy you are just kind of blitzing through everything, get to whatever the objective is, do it and run. You can skip mobs, you don't care. You're just trying to get to the end, kill that boss or whatever the final thing is, get your glyph points, and then get out and get back in as fast as possible. Now, if you did want more on that, there should be a card that pops up and it'll tell you about another video we did that shows you exactly how to maximize glyph leveling. It is the second strategy in detail, so if you guys want that, definitely go check that out. Now, I did promise a big bonus, and this changes the way that I play the game entirely. It is one of the fastest speed ups I can do for leveling, and it's odd because it's the things you do when you're not killing anything, and that is sorting through your gear very, very fast. So now to do this, I do want to show you guys firsthand how I do it. Okay, so here we are in the game. I just wanted to show you this directly. So I have actually just come back from a number of maiden runs, and I have a full bag of just legendaries, which is pretty much what I'll be doing from like level 20 in my leveling all the way to now. But here is one of my classes in endgame, full 100 max glyphs. But I will do pretty much the same thing. For this, there's a slight difference in the only things I look at this late in the game is going to be greater fixes, because I really want items that I can build on. And so I look at the greater fix, I see if the greater fix that's on here is something I want. This is intelligence. That is a great greater fix. And then I check the other two also matter, because I am running out of bag space. So then what I'll do, this one is good because it has the intelligence and the max life. I don't care about life on hit for this build, but I can re-roll that for enchantment. So this is still a good possibility for me later. So I will mark it as a favorite. I'll check this one. Same thing. This even has critical strike damage. This may be good to go as is. I will mark that as good to make sure I don't make any mistakes at this point. Those are the only things I was going to check. So I will come to my stash and I will drop both of those off. So now they're not even in my bag. I don't have to worry about destroying the things I want to keep. If I'm doing this earlier, I'm going to just do the sort, and I'm just going to look at the top item here. So if I'm in world tier 2 or 3, you're not getting just 925s all across the board, which is what I have here. Then I just want to see the early ones. If this helmet is even close, I might check the first two. If they're not, then I'm going to ignore every helmet after that. And I'm going to do the same thing for chest armor and so on. And the same thing, I will mark it, and then I will drop it off before I do anything. Now, the next piece, these are all stuff that I do not need to keep and don't care to keep, is I'm going to walk over to the blacksmith. I haven't done anything. I haven't marked anything. This is a bad example because we don't have anything that we would actually break down. But there is normally a little cross in the center, a little white emblem. It says, hey, this is still an aspect that is an upgrade or a Codex of Power add-on that you don't have yet. And so the first thing I do is I look for those. Let's say this one had one, this one had one, this one had one. And I'm going to mark them all as salvage, because what I want to do is break them down with one click or a click of one button. And that's this all junk. So I'm just going to hit that button and then those will all clear. I can do it because I actually need the breakdown. This in endgame, because gold is really the limiter, even doing this with only the items that actually have aspects that we want to upgrade in our Codex of Power, this still gives us plenty of material that we break down from the salvage to keep leveling up and enchanting and everything else that we do. Earlier on, that may be less so because, well, actually, it might actually work out because earlier you have a lot of things missing in your Codex of Power. So, but there still is strategies early if you're running your first character and this is not an alt, that you may want to just break down all of them for a while, like maybe in World Tier 2, every legendary that isn't, or all legendaries are broke down no matter what, if you're not going to equip them, you know, and that's it. And that'll give you a good base of material. Then by World Tier 3, you can start switching over, because the next thing we want to do, we've now cleared the things that were going to be broken down. We want to sell everything else. And so I'll come in here, and instead of, if I hit this and I can do it one at a time. Oh, they're finally letting us do that without having an okay every time. So you can go through and you can right click all of these, or you can just tag all of them. So before, they used to have a thing where every time you break down a legendary, it gives you a warning. They're not doing that much. This is a little quicker. I just hit the space bar if you're using a PC. And then what I do is all I have to do is right click one of them and they all go. So that is a quick way of dealing with it. And it also allows me to very fast. I mean, I was showing you in a slow version of that, but if you can imagine, I'm looking at only the greater fixes. I'm marking which ones I like. I'm selling them off with one click by just marking them all as salvage for the ones, or breaking them down with one click, just by marking all the ones I want at once, hitting that button. And then I'm over to the merchant and I'm selling the rest, building up that gold stockpiles that I'm going to need. Now, if you definitely want that faster strategy for glyph leveling primarily, and you don't want to spend as much time in Nightmare Dungeons, do not miss this video. This is my fastest Nightmare Dungeon glyph leveling tips. They are going to help you a ton.